Welcome to the JALTCALL podcast. I'm joined here today by Jeanette Dennisson and
Hey
our
guys.
special guest. Welcome, Mehrasa Alizadeh, Associate Professor in the Institute for General Education at Otemon Gakuin University. She holds a BA in English Language and Literature and an MA in Teaching English as a Foreign Language from Alime Tabatabai University in Tehran. In 2013, she received the Japanese government Monbuka Gakusho scholarship and completed a PhD at Osaka University. Murasa's work bridges educational technology and language learning, hence her involvement in the call SIG. She leaves a strong footprint in obviously computer-assisted language learning, immersive technologies, especially virtual reality and augmented reality, and online course design and quality assessment. Her research explores how technology, and especially immersive technologies, can enhance learning engagement, communication, and self-efficacy in students. So how they feel about their own learning. So I met Mehrasa multiple times now at JOLT conferences, especially the JALTCALL SIG conference. And the last time, I think we're all in the same room, me, Jeanette, and Mehrasa were in the same room when she was presenting about her work on virtual reality.
Yeah, and I was just talking to her about that before we started and how me and you, James, started our project based on her presentation. So
That's
we got
right.
inspired from her. So we want everyone to be inspired by her at our next conference. So
So
Thank you.
welcome, welcome.
yeah, welcome. That is an outline of Merasa's work in general, but we'd like to start at the beginning. So can you share how your academic journey began? I mean, obviously, we should also mention that I believe you have Japanese nationality now. You maybe you can tell us, but maybe born in Iran, went to university there. How did the language learning journey start? And maybe talk about the coming to Japan and all of that. Give us your story.
Thank you very much for having me. Hello, everyone. And thanks for the invitation to join the podcast today. As you said, was born and raised in Iran, and I started learning English when I was about 11 years old. And as you know, in Iran, the official language is Persian. So I was learning English just like in an environment similar to that of Japan. So
Mm,
English was my foreign language, so to say. And then when I entered university, I had a strong desire to major in English, although I graduated from a high school where most people would go into fields of engineering or medical sciences, basically a natural science sort of school. And then I changed my major, despite a lot of disagreements from people around me. And after doing my bachelor's and master's, I decided to move to Japan. Back in the days, nobody really thought of Japan and Iran as a study abroad destination. Most people would rather go to, back in the days, would prefer to go to Europe or to North America or to Australia, so to say, mostly English speaking countries. But then, having had the chance to come to Japan to attend a conference, I found out about the MEX scholarship program, and that's how I actually decided to come to Japan to do my PhD here.
mm,
Yeah, in 2014, October, that's when I moved to Japan as a student, and
mm,
I started learning Japanese first. Usually, when you're on the MEX scholarship, you're given a period of time to learn the language before you enter a degree program. And in my case, I took a year and a half to start my PhD at Osaka University. Actually, the name of the university has changed to the University of Osaka. Maybe I should go
mm,
with the official name. So I wanted to initially enter the Graduate School of Language and Culture, but then I found out there were difficulties entering that school, mostly language proficiency problems. And that's how I ended up doing my PhD at the School of Information Science and Technology. And that's how all my, call and tell journey started. It had
mm,
started back in Iran, but it was reinforced, I'd better say,
mm,
by entering that graduate school. And that's how I learned about immersive technologies in the
mm,
first place and got interested in them because I was graduating. I was doing my PhD actually at a lab where people were developing XR apps and experiences, not necessarily for learning,
mm.
obviously for entertainment or various purposes. But then I found some possibilities and opportunities to apply those technologies to language education. And that's how my journey got shaped.
May I ask a follow-up question then regarding your PhD? What was the title? What did you do for that? What was the study?
Yeah, so because I made the proposal, written the proposal for the PhD program before I had learned about immersive technologies, I wasn't using them extensively in the PhD research. My PhD dissertation was mostly focused on developing a blended course for Japanese learners of English, general, English for academic purposes course for a group of students at Osaka University. These courses have always been blended. This is pre-COVID. There were not many online courses, but the nature of the course made it possible for it to be blended. And so together with a co-researcher, we managed to redesign the course from scratch and make it more communicative. It used to be more like a course where students would interact with a package and a commercial package, and they wouldn't really get much, productive skills practice. But we tried to make it more focused in a communicative manner, so students would be able to do more of speaking and writing activities rather than just reading and listening. However, as part of that course, I managed to use a little bit of augmented reality to let the students augment their physical posters using an AR app back then. Yeah, so that little bit of XR was in my research back in the days. But then after graduating and starting work as a researcher here in Japan, I got more into immersive technologies and had better opportunities to apply them to my research and practice.
Bit of a random question.
Can I ask a follow-up as well?
Yeah, sure, go for it.
Is that okay? You mentioned blended learning, and I want you to kind of follow up on that because you said that was your theme. What was your target at the beginning, and how did that shift?
Yes, so course design was the main focus of that study, but then I was also interested in quality assessment. So we actually used an existing rubric and set of, criteria for evaluating a course, and we managed to improve the course after getting it reviewed by an external reviewer. So that is how we approached the task of designing and evaluating the course. And then we also collected data, obviously, from students' performance as well as their feedback on the course in general. Because it was a blended course, we met the students for 5 sessions face-to-face out of the 15-week semester. And then one of those 5 sessions was dedicated to doing a poster presentation, and that's where the students used augmented reality to overlay some extra digital content on their posters. And they enjoyed going around in a poster carousel to see each other's AR creations.
All right, I have a follow-up too. You are also maybe one of the founding members of the JALT MA VR SIG, I believe. So I know that you did some work with Eric Hawkinson, who I've not met in a long time, but I know that he's someone that's doing this similar kind of work. How do your paths cross, and how does the MA VR SIG become established?
Sure. Yeah. So I owe the opportunity to meet Eric to Kyoto JALT. That's when he gave a workshop at one of the Kyoto JALT events, and that's where I first met him. So there were not many people back in the days, not many that I knew of, at least not in Japan, that were doing this kind of research. I know, James, you have personally been very, very much involved with XR technologies. But you haven't been in Tokyo, and me as a student in Osaka maybe not really had much chances of meeting each other and talking about this field of research. But luckily, Eric, who was based in Kyoto back then, in Fukuchiyama, the University of Fukuchiyama, I managed to meet him at that Kyoto JALT event, and that's how gradually we started developing the idea of starting a SIG around mixed augmented and virtual realities technology. And we call it MAVER, by the way.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, thanks for spelling it out as well. I obviously knew that it was mixed augmented and virtual realities, but yeah, MAVR was just the way. Yeah. Okay, MAVER. Oh, okay. That's excellent. And how has that has it grown? Has it shrunk? What's the situation with the SIG?
Yeah, good question. So we've always been a very small SIG, and we're not having so many members these days. So I can't say it's growing, but the core members who are still involved with the SIG are pretty active in the field. So we have a small core group who are pretty much into this area of research. But because maybe, well, this is maybe one of the themes and one of the things that I should touch upon in my research. It hasn't been growing, as people would have expected. It's not like mobile technologies, for instance, that have made their way around to every classroom. So these technologies require a lot more infrastructure, a lot more preparation. So that's why maybe this group has not been growing as much, but the core people are pretty much heavily involved with the area of research. Yeah, XR technologies is a big thing for us.
Yeah, I was in Hokkaido at the weekend for the Hokkaido JALT conference, and Ewan Bonner and Ryan Legge were there, who do a lot of work in mixed reality, and they prefaced their presentation by saying, what we're showing today is cutting edge. This is not classroom applicable just yet, right? And so they were saying, maybe in 10 years or 15 years time, when people, students are wearing smart glasses that can allow for augmented reality, it might be a reality then. But yeah, it seems that the work that you and others are doing in that area, the cutting edge kind of research, again, of course, it's worth doing, and it's future proofing language teaching. But maybe the fact that teachers are not, they can't see the immediate applicability of that to their own classrooms. Maybe that's why it's not as attractive as things like, we have the AI, we'll get onto that soon, but the AI boom now, where teachers can say, oh, I can use this straight away. Now I just need to type into a browser. So maybe that's one of the reasons. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Very good point.
I do have a follow-up question, because we're still talking about background. We're still talking about background.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So I did mention at the start that you got Japanese not residency.
Citizenship. Yeah.
Citizenship, that's the word. Sorry. Yes. Tell us about that, if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, most people I know around me who have come to Japan usually have looked at Japan as a, transition phase in their career. But I knew from day one that whichever country I go to, whether it's Japan or somewhere in Europe or elsewhere around the world, I would want to make that my home. So I invested time and energy into learning Japanese from day one. I never looked at this country as a place where I would only do my PhD. I mean, obviously, after coming to Japan and seeing that I like it, this motivated me to study Japanese even harder. But before coming to Japan, I knew that I had to go through the difficulties of learning a language that is not similar to my first language, Persian, nor similar to English, my second language. And I had some experience learning French. Obviously, again, that's very different from Japanese. So yeah, from day one, I invested in learning Japanese very much, and it was difficult. I remember I could cry in the Japanese intensive course classes, at least for the first month. That's how difficult it was to go through, multiple classes in a day with people who had already actually studied the language for about 100 hours. So I was placed in the wrong class. I usually say, referring to Krashen's input hypothesis, I was in an environment which to me felt like an I plus 1,000, not I plus
I was
1.
going to say, yeah.
I've been there. I also got my master's here, and I remember crying in my seminar class with my supervisor and the other students, and I was trying my hardest to do it in Japanese, and the frustration.
What do you mean, crying in Japanese, Jeanette?
I was
joking,
presenting research
I
a research
apologize.
paper in Japanese, and just the tears of difficulty of facing the language got to me. So I can totally relate to the crying bit of struggling with the Japanese. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's been difficult, but because I put in the time and I had this plan from the start, I made sure every step I take leads to this ultimate goal, because I knew as a researcher, I would want to live a free life. I would want to be able to travel to different countries for doing research, for presenting at conferences. But unfortunately, with an Iranian passport, I didn't have that ability. I mean, I did travel to multiple conferences even when I was a student and did not have a Japanese passport, but it was never easy. And going through the trouble of getting into a country, going through immigration with an Iranian passport is something that not many people have the experience of. But those who do will truly understand what I mean. Yeah, you're not looked at as an individual. You are just treated based on, the general group of people you belong to, who may have, things may not have always been in their favor. So, and it wasn't in my experience as well. So it was sometimes hard to be as active as I wanted to. But luckily, since I managed to get the Japanese citizenship, yeah, one big perk of this situation is that I can travel freely. I can attend more conferences and do whatever pretty much I want to as a researcher. So there's no barrier in terms of mobility for me anymore.
You mentioned that the barrier to for the mobility then being, the passport that you hold kind of made it difficult to enter certain countries. Do you think that there was any pressure or maybe restrictions, limitations from within Iran? I mean, obviously it's a country that is in the news right now for, a lot of, well, shocking, government related things that are happening in the country. So what I'm trying to say is, do you think that there was any limitations and restrictions posed on you internally in Iran? Like you especially, again, I'm speaking a little bit ignorantly, but as a female as well, especially, like you shouldn't be doing this, you shouldn't be doing that, you shouldn't be going to universities or traveling abroad. Or can you speak about that at all?
So the barriers and restrictions that I faced were mostly the ones that were imposed by the government. Luckily, my family have always been in favor of me being a researcher, being an academic, following a career. So they've always encouraged me and supported me tremendously in my trajectory. But no pressure from family, luckily. But there are things that we all suffer as, Iranian passport holders. So there are these looks and these presumptions that are made about you without looking at you as the individual.
I see. So it's more about external, the eyes on you from external. Okay, I see. Right. Well, as a Japanese person, then how do you feel?
I feel I was reborn. So when I came to Japan, obviously I learned so many things in Iran. I made so many great human connections, so many precious friendships. But I usually, this is a joke, of course, but I would say I would count my age as the number of years I've lived in Japan, because this was the free life that I always opted for. So like if I'd been in Japan for 6 years, I'd say, oh, this is my 6th birthday.
Yeah.
Now, when I got the citizenship, I kind of went back to 0 because I felt like I was reborn. Now I'm 3 years old.
Again, I guess the final question, just related to Japan, and not to call or JALT, but related to Japan and citizenship, is that I heard that when you become a citizen, you are allowed to choose kanji for your name. And I've always thought about having York as kanji. And is that true? Did you rename? Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. You have the choice between, among hiragana, katakana, and kanji. You have to choose from one of the 3 Japanese scripts. You can't keep an so to say, alphabet name. So you definitely have to change. But I decided as a researcher not to make the scene confusing, further confusing. So I decided to stick with my original name. I shortened it. Those who have seen my former, residence cards would have recognized how long my name used to be. It was like a paragraph. Anyway, it came in 4 parts, but somehow in the Iranian passport, the 2 parts to my first name and the 2 parts to my last name were joined as one word. So you can imagine what a long stretch of, letters that would make it to be. But I shortened my name. I chose the parts that I actually recognized as my first and last name and just rewrote them in katakana. So my official name is now Alizadeh Mehrasa. That's how it's written in Japanese.
Excellent.
And I'm happy with it. Yeah, a lot less trouble filling out forms for those of you who may have had middle names or have a longer name, perhaps recognize a lot of these issues.
This guy next to me, right? Jeanette Dennisson, is that quite a long katakana name?
Yeah, because I have a middle name, so I have to put that in officially as well for all documentation. So
all right, well, we'll stop there. That is us for section 1. Join us after the break, where we will get more into our interview and explore the conference theme and Mehrasa's current research projects. Welcome back with me, Jeanette and Mehrasa. So we're going to talk about research and projects right now. And Merasa's recent research continues to push the boundaries of, as we just mentioned, immersive language learning and AI-enhanced communication. So multiple projects that I have in front of me here. One is about enhancing intercultural communication using VR. And this is awarded a grants in aid for scientific research. We all know it as the CACM. Grant to investigate how virtual reality and interactive AI can support deeper intercultural communication between language learners. And I think the study was between Japanese and Australian learners. Oh, she's nodding. Yes. We're good so far. And this work aims to overcome traditional barriers in intercultural international exchange, i.e. access and language anxiety, by using VR environments and AI-driven interactions. So yeah, could you tell us a bit about this project maybe? Is it a current project that it's still ongoing?
Yes, it is a current project. I'm actually in the preparatory phase for that, so I don't have much to share in terms of the research outcomes yet, but I can tell you a little bit about how I came across this topic and how I got interested in that. So in a previous COCEN project where I was interested in comparing Zoom with VR in improving students' learning outcomes as well as their engagement, I found out after doing that research that it would be a lot more interesting, since I found out that students in Japan who were connected to each other through whether Zoom or VR found it very interesting to interact with students from other universities. This is usually one thing that students studying in one Japanese university may not have many chances to experience. They usually only work with the people they share a club with or people at their part-time jobs. But this was a unique opportunity for them to talk to students from all over the place. So Neil and I, who were collaborating a lot, Neil Cowie, my co-researcher, and I, who were collaborating on this project, actually felt that, well, this could in fact be expanded into an intercultural study, like connecting Japanese students to those overseas. And we're in the preparation phase for that. So Neil is now based in the University of Auckland, and we will start the pilot study with the students he works with there. He actually teaches in a language center in the English Academy, I believe is the name. But basically he's working with international students who are getting ready to enter programs at the Uni of Auckland. And this is a great opportunity for Japanese students to interact with their partners overseas. Usually students in Japan especially will have many more opportunities to interact and communicate with other second language speakers of English, say other students from Asian countries. And this is the environment that the University of Auckland can provide us with. So I think we'll start from there. And then if we have an opportunity, we can expand that to Australia as well. My research partner in Australia works at the University of Melbourne, and he has a contact there who teaches Japanese to Australian students, the students of the University of Melbourne. And that could be also an opportunity to do a tandem kind of project, because the two groups of students we potentially could connect to each other would share a second language, like Japanese learners of English, English learners of Japanese. So that could be also a quite interesting context to focus on. And yeah, through my previous COCEN, I felt like this could be the next step to expand the research. And then AI came around, so I thought, why not make use of that? Because many students may feel anxious, they may just not feel ready to all of a sudden enter a collaboration or a kind of exchange with other students overseas who are total strangers to them. So to prepare them for that sort of intercultural exchange, we will be using AI a little bit. And we hope to find and come across a good conversational AI tool, because a lot of the research so far that has been carried out on AI has been focused on using it in written mode. For writing skills, obviously, it can be very powerful, but not much research has yet been done on using interactive or conversational AI. So that's an area that I'd be particularly interested in. For intercultural exchange.
Before Jeanette jumps in, I know she's got something to say. So you're saying then that you want an AI chatbot or interactant to prepare the students for the online cultural exchange. Is that the use of AI here? Could you go into that a little bit?
So Um, the previous, again, going back to the reason why we are forming the research the way it is now, is that in the previous research, we did everything synchronously. The students would get together either on Zoom or in VR and communicate with one another on a given topic. But then all of these students were on the same time zone, were in Japan, and even being on the same time zone, it was hard to coordinate with people. Sometimes students would be absent, they would come late to this 1 hour weekly lessons. So we thought to make things more smooth, especially because we're doing it with other students in Australia or New Zealand. I mean, time-wise, there's a 2 hour, sometimes a 4 hour time difference, especially with New Zealand. So we thought it's better to do the virtual exchange project in the form of asynchronous virtual tours, where students in each of these countries, the partners, institutions would create their own virtual tours using ThingLink, and then be able to exchange that with a partner. And then based on that, the content, the virtual tour that they have created, they could have something to share. Maybe they could guide each other, viewing each other's tours online when they meet synchronously later. And to prepare for that phase, also to help them perhaps create better tours, we could use AI. So that's where the AI component of the research comes in. Mostly preparing the students, helping them create better tours, and helping them to be better tour guides to their partners.
Yeah, so you already picked up on my particular question, which was the time difference, especially when you involved other countries and people at different time zones. And I remember you talking about this at a presentation before, or I've seen it discussed in presentations before, where anytime you do like a COIL or some kind of international exchange with other universities at different time zones, I always hear this is the biggest complaint of getting people synchronously at the same time doing an activity. So it looks like you've already had thought about this, and you've adapted your technology to help with this problem. This sounds really interesting. I'm looking forward to hearing more about it.
And the AI, and the AI chatbot, Jeanette, I'm sure you wanted to mention.
Oh, definitely. I mean, as you might know, that's my wheelhouse. I'm using chatbots for specifically conversation. So
Awesome.
we can definitely have conversations about that and reflect on how to utilize them in your context, of course.
Yeah, since we're still preparing for the research and haven't started the actual project with students yet, I would love to hear more from you, because I've been looking for a great chatbot that actually, facilitates real-time, seamless communication with the AI bot. You not having major time lags in between, like taking time to transcribe what a student or user says, and then making sure that the AI also speaks back to the user, not them.
Would this be a single language? That's another issue always addressed in conversation. Students use two languages all the time. L1, they're talking to themselves, and then L2, they're trying to use the English. And sometimes chatbots react differently in these situations. So
interesting. Yeah, I told you I was in County Seoul, right? I joined the presentation, sorry, by colleagues from Japan who were doing a COIL project, and they also talked about using ChatGPT Live to help the students practice their oral skills. And they also mentioned the issue with the AI chatbot making a mistake about the language the student was using. Maybe their English was not clear, or their Japanese was not as well. Japanese would be accurate, obviously, but their English was not clear, and it was the AI chatbot thought of it as Korean or something.
Yes, this is my results as well. And it affects the situation, right? It affects how we use the tool. So this is definitely an area of research I'm looking into, because in ChatGPT, the setting is you select the language of detection or auto select.
Sure.
And I find sometimes auto select is hard to actually, when the language L2 is broken English, it gets hard. So these are all issues, right? This is part of our failing and redoing and failing and redoing. So
That's
really
right.
on target for this conference, which we're going to talk about next.
Great. Yeah, I think we'll have a lot to share then. Looking forward to seeing you and learning more about what you've discovered in this area.
Okay, everyone, welcome back with me, Jeanette, and Mehrasa. We're on to section 3 of the podcast where we're looking at the on the horizon part. So, on the horizon for Mehrasa, well, in the near horizon, we know that she's going to be our keynote speaker. So, we're going to talk about that. And then on the horizon, we just had a bit of an insight into her research. So, we're going to think about what she's going to be doing in the future as well. So, let's wrap up by talking about forward-looking ideas and the tools, the books, learning platforms, things like that you might want to share with us as well. But first, the conference. So without spoiling everything, the theme of the conference this year is prevail or fail. No, it's fail or prevail. Prevailing must come after a failure. It only works that way. So I personally have submitted a talk to show my own failures, to highlight how things go wrong sometimes and how I iterated and got over those problems. And again, I don't want you to spoil everything that you're going to be talking about in your keynote, but yeah, what are some of the troubles and difficulties that you've had in your research?
Sure. Yeah, so since the PhD, the program that I was in, and I told you I did a little bit of AR, augmented reality research in that project, I have always, as many other researchers and practitioners have, failed in so many areas. Technology, they say, always fails us. Although there are so many benefits, there's not a new innovation that you try to implement and you manage not to fail, right? So there's failure is always part of the process.
Every day,
and
right?
yeah, without that, you don't learn how to fix things. So you have to make mistakes. That's also true about language learning, isn't it? Without mistakes, you don't learn how to gain accuracy and to improve things. And so is everything that is related to research. So we all have our own moments of failure, and reflection is, I think, what helps us improve in the next iteration of the process. A lot of
That's my
research.
buzzword these days, reflection. Yeah, that's my new buzzword
Yeah.
I'm going to use for this year's academic
You have to
coursework.
buy some more mirrors just to remind you.
Well,
Yes,
it
that
is.
as well.
People do recommend having mirrors around your house. Makes you see who you are
There you go.
constantly.
Face yourself.
Right.
Um,
So obviously, technical problems always happen. The simplest of which could be, lack of connection, proper connection to the internet. Like, especially if you're doing things remotely with students, like I was in the previous project I just told you about. There were times when students would join the VR environment on a mobile device, or they would be in a cafe, or you name it, like
On
not
the
a
train.
proper, yes, on the train. In a car. I remember having one student joining in a car. So yeah, they join from all sorts of places, because this is why we are actually implementing technology. Our motto is always to say that this is accessible anywhere, anytime, right?
Yeah.
But then that comes with the restrictions of proper access to the internet, and the absence of the best device that could give them the optimal learning experience. So there's always these restrictions that we struggle with. Also, the technologies that we're dealing with, them being cutting edge, and also lots of companies trying to develop them on the go and making changes to platforms that we're constantly using, definitely makes issues for us as we're implementing it. A feature is just inactive and like deactivated, and then a platform that we have worked on for years disappears all of a sudden, just as we
I hear
published a
you.
paper
That
on
was
it.
ChatGPT for me, man. I was using ChatGPT for 3 years, and every time I blinked, it changed. So it affects your research when a
Sure.
source or a technology you're using that's not your own
Yeah.
it changes midstream. So I hear you on that.
Something
Real.
Yeah.
that the teachers amongst the audience might be aware of. This is something that came up at the weekend. Was Flipgrid was a huge tool
Yes.
that teachers like to use, and then Microsoft bought it and just kind of destroyed it. So yeah, it's another famous
That
Right.
was the
story
same
of
with
this.
Quizlet too. I think Quizlet got also a lot of firewalls of how you can use
I think it
it.
just got priced very highly. Like
Mm.
the
Right.
free tier was very much reduced in terms of its usage.
So that affects our classroom mid-semester, and
Yeah,
I'm sure Mehrasa can understand that, especially with VR and AR. If the technology
that's
changes,
true.
how do you do your experiment? How you do your class or
Yeah.
your activities, right?
Yeah,
This is much more likely to happen in terms of XR technologies, I believe,
interesting.
because they're
Yeah.
newer and many startup companies are the ones that are working on these platforms, usually the ones that are more affordable, you know.
Mm,
There are many possibilities, many platforms out there, but not all of them may be available or accessible to us as individual teachers, unless
yeah.
our university invests the money and buys that platform or gets a subscription. So a lot of times we are dealing with these issues, with these dilemmas of which platform to choose and making sure that it stays around for at least the period of time we're doing the research or the practice in
Mm.
our classrooms.
And
Do you
then
think
the
that?
second part of that is the presentation or the reporting about it.
Yeah, I was going
So
to say.
that the delay in reporting, you collect the data, and all of a sudden your version available is changed and completely
Right,
different,
right, right.
and your results are
It's a
almost
race.
invalid.
Yeah.
That's
You know,
true.
that's also
That's
another
true.
failure in a sense. It's like people don't care about 3.5 ChatGPT; they want to know about 5.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah. And since AI came around, I think these changes have really exponentially increased in, speed.
Mm.
It's crazy how things get changed by the second.
Okay, so you mentioned in the part two about your current research on VR and international exchanges and AI. So I guess that's going to be on the horizon for you for the next few years. Is it a 3-year Kaken?
That's right. And
Yeah.
I'm in the first year,
Okay.
nearing the end of the first year.
Any other projects or things that you have on your to-do list or things that you'd like to
Mm.
achieve in the near future?
Yeah, kind of related to this intercultural exchange project, but doing it domestically at our university. We've been trying to use the same platform links, ThingLink that I mentioned with international students on campus. International students are usually a great resource for Japanese students that unfortunately get neglected quite often.
Mm,
We're often looking for partners overseas, forgetting sometimes that we have these international students at hand on campus who could be great partners for our Japanese learners.
yeah.
So that's one thing that my colleague Catherine Thornton and I have been trying to implement at our university, Otemon Gakuin University. She's in charge of the Self-Access Learning Center at our
Hmm.
uni, and then through her attempts, we've managed to run VR workshops like in the SALC, where international students have created tours of their countries and got the Japanese students to experience those.
Wow.
And then through that project,
Wow.
we even made a small team of international and Japanese students who collaborated on making tours and took the devices with the tours they had prepared to the Expo 2025 that was held in Osaka last year. And they presented that to the people visiting the Expo. So
Brilliant.
yeah, lots also doing that kind of thing domestically within Japan, within our institution, and also getting those, VR experiences, which are quite rare for high school or junior high school students. So we have affiliated high school and junior high with our university, and we got the students there to come to the campus, like they're our neighbors, basically,
Hmm.
not much of a distance. So they got to the university campus, and then we provided these experiences to them as well, which was a worthwhile thing for them, I believe, because not many students get to experience VR. Not many of them get to learn about
Right.
other countries as much.
Hmm. That's wonderful.
It sounds like a
Thank
prevail to
you.
me.
Yeah, nice.
Yes, this was, I think, based on the failures that we had in the other remote project, we felt like it needs to be simple, it needs to be accessible to everyone.
Mm-mm-mm.
Yeah.
All right,
And
so
then
go
short.
on if you wanted to. Yeah.
Sorry, no, it
Uh,
has to be short and sweet, when
keep it
students are
super
wearing the
simple, right?
VR. Yes.
Mm. Keep it super simple. Kiss it, right? So just a kind of final question from me then is, what kind of resources do you have anything that you would recommend to people to read as a kind of, immersive technologies and language learning 101 kind of, introductory course or something? What kind of resources would you recommend to listeners to learn more about this area of work?
Sure.
Apart from
So,
your own papers, maybe.
yeah, no, Yeah, well, the papers are available too, but also looking at the research trends each year, I think is a very great idea.
Mm.
Usually, the organization, I think this is based in the US, but many institutions around the world are members of EDUCAUSE, if you've heard of this.
Edu-cause. Okay.
EDUCAUSE, yes.
Okay.
So education and with cause.
Yeah.
And then they publish a report called the Horizon Report
Mm.
annually, which has details about the sort of technologies that have been used in education around the world and what is the trend, and so on and so forth. So that is one resource that people can access for free, I believe. You may need to do a sign up, like enter your email or institution on their website, but you're able usually to download it for free. And then referring to a resource like that, I think will be a good place to start with to see what's going on around the world. And some countries, like I know colleagues in Australia have been creating the domestic version of the Horizon Report, like looking at the Australian context, for instance. And I'm sure elsewhere around the world, similar attempts are being made. We have lots of open access journals. I believe correct me if I'm wrong, but the JALTCALL journal, I believe, is open access. So there's lots of resources to access through that. Some practitioner-oriented journals are also available. I believe within JOLT, we have the TLT journal, which is more oriented to teachers. That's, again, another great resource to look for tech stuff. And then the TLT Wired column usually has great content about technology. So these are some of the resources that I could recommend. But above all, to go ahead in this, really crazily fast changing society and research area, I believe that collaboration is the key. We can't just get things done by ourselves just because we have a limited amount of time. Everybody's got 24 hours on, fortunately or fortunately, I'm not sure. Anyway, in my experience, I've done a lot when I've collaborated with people because, you can support each other emotionally and cognitively. Which are very important. And I learned this having graduated from that graduate school of information science and technology, because in the engineering and science and informatics fields, people collaborate a lot more than we do in social sciences and humanities fields.
Gotcha.
I believe that we should borrow from their culture and learn from them. Yeah.
Amazing end note. Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Jeanette, do you have any more questions before we wrap up?
I'm just excited about our conference, and I want to hear all of everyone's ideas and how they're succeeding and also facing challenges. And Mehrasa definitely is able to share her story, and we're all looking forward to it. So welcome, and we look forward to seeing you in June, right?
Yeah,
Thank
June.
you.
We also have the JALTCALL Forum will be at PanSig 2026 in Nagoya in May. So yeah, they're all JALTCALL events coming up. So I'd like to thank Mehrasa once again for joining us today, and for you guys for listening in, tuning in. So Mehrasa, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me. It was great.
Yeah, it's great to hear you and see you, and I can't wait until June. Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.